Recently, well, a few months ago, um, the subject of the mask mandates in North Dakota and their effectiveness was, well, brought up in the course of what I guess could be generously called a conversation. And I had looked at the data, but I hadn't really given it a thorough going over. And let's do that now, shall we? The mask mandates were put in place by Governor Burgum, North Dakota, on about the 13th of November 2020, and were renewed a few times. And on about the 22nd of April 2021, the state legislature um, got rid of them. Now, there was a fight over, they passed the law, and then the governor vetoed the law, and I believe it went to the state Supreme Court. Um, the short story is ultimately the legislature prevailed and said that the governor couldn't just keep renewing this mandate forever. This is not the only state this has happened in. But the politics aside, we ought to be able to look at the data in a calm and rational manner without having a conniption. So let's do that now, shall we? Let's actually take a look at where we wound up and why we wound up there. Just the data. Okay? Let's take a look. Okay. This image shows the reported daily cases in both North and South Dakota. The chart begins on the 1st of July 2020 and ends on the 30th of June 2021. So basically a year-long chart. The rectangle encloses the portion of the charts beginning at the peak when the governor of North Dakota imposed a mask mandate, 13th of November 2020. The box ends on about the 22nd of April, when cases had tapered off a lot and the state legislature got tired of the renewal of mask mandates and said no more. Now, those people looking at this who want to believe one way or the other are going to see what they want to see. So let's break it down a little further. First, to the people who believe that the masks made no difference, well, the bottom chart is North Dakota. And if you look closely, you can discern that the number of cases in North Dakota dropped off more rapidly than they did in South Dakota. Now, the charts are very similar, and you could make the case that, well, that drop off, they look so similar that what's the real difference? Now, a person who is convinced the masks made a difference is going to look at that chart and say, see, it dropped off more rapidly. The masks did have an impact. Well, it's not that simple. There is something that needs to be considered when you look at data. It's a principle that when you ignore it, you are going to draw some hideously erroneous conclusions. Failure to heed this is often the driving force behind colossal economic and societal mistakes. Correlation is not causation. This simply means that because two events occur at the same time does not necessarily mean that one of those events caused the other. Now, it's often true. It's often self-evident. This is so commonplace that we tend to assume that it's always true. Fact of the matter is, it's not. But a lot of people at this point would be scoffing and saying, well, wait a minute. These two things have to be directly related. No, they could be indirectly related. Here's the deal. Looking at the data and assuming that because there was a more rapid drop-off in North Dakota was a directly caused by the mask mandate, that doesn't allow for the human factor. It would take a great deal of research, the kind that requires funding, to determine if that was what caused it. And honestly, I don't think anybody really wants to do that because they may be afraid of what they're going to find out. Here's something to consider. It is entirely possible that the mask mandate, people wore masks because it was a mandate, and it caused a more rapid drop-off, albeit one that's not that easy to see on the chart. It's also possible that the masks, even though the mask mandate caused it, it wasn't the masks. Now, what do I mean by that? There's got to be a significant minority of the population that is either not paying close attention or just really doesn't understand. They're confused by all of the rhetoric. They're confused by the whole concept of viral transmission. They don't really understand what's going on. They hear that the governor has imposed a mask mandate after saying for a long time, or apparently being very hesitant to do so, and they go, wow, this must really be serious. And so they take it serious, and what they do is maybe they wear their masks, but maybe they change their behavior. Maybe they discover that wearing a mask in public is a pain in the butt, and so they don't go out as often. They order stuff online. They don't eat out. They actually do social distance. We can get into whether or not that's effective later. They just wash their hands. They're extra careful because they realize that if there's a mandate, this must be really serious. So did the masks work? They wouldn't have had to. The masks wouldn't have had to have actually had any effect at all to cause the same effect if the mandate made people take it seriously. Were there other ways of doing that? Possibly. But just because the mandate may have had that effect, it doesn't mean the masks that were mandated were the cause of that effect. And then when the mask mandate went away, it's really hard to see in those charts the data signal. You'd have to lay that out on a spreadsheet. You'd have to have greater statistical and analytical ability than I possess to analyze it. It appears from the chart that there was very little impact. I can't honestly see it in the data signal there. So that's kind of where we're at on those two factors. Did the mask mandate work? The mask mandate apparently had some effect, but not nearly as much as a lot of people seem to think. The people who only looked at North Dakota's data, the chart said, wow, it really dropped off fast. The people who looked at South Dakota's data, where there was no mandate and where the governor was championing freedom, make your own decisions, be educated on these things, and you decide what's right for you. That little bit of political theater, people took it less seriously there. And yet, when you compare the two charts, they're really, really, really similar. So I guess it all boils down to, I'm not going to tell you what really made a difference. I just want to give you something to think about. Did it work? Did it not work? But the calm, rational analysis in the aftermath of this pandemic is what we need. And we're not getting it. We're not getting it from the right, and we're not getting it from the left. And we have ceased to pay attention to the data, and we've decided to pay attention instead to people who are running around screaming like their hair is on fire. We need to stop. We need to talk about it. We need to look at that data, and we need to make decisions going forward. Next thing up, we're going to look at COVID-19 in comparison to other nasty bugs in history. Till then, I hope you enjoyed this. Please feel free to criticize. If it was good, let all your friends know. If it was bad, have an ice cream and forget all about it. Adios.